In today's business world, being an average CEO is no longer an option. That's why we're committed to equipping you with the resources and the tactics necessary to not just survive, but to thrive. You're listening to Not Your Average CEO Lifeline podcast, where we are more than just a voice in the crowd. Hi, everyone. Not Your Average CEO Lifeline here today. We are talking with guest David Price. David, welcome for joining. We're excited to have you. Can you tell our audience briefly about yourself and a little bit of your background?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me on the podcast. Definitely an honor, and I appreciate the invite. And feel like I'm just a regular person. Got my insurance license, worked a couple different businesses, but insurance is my main business right now that I've been having a lot of success with and been able to scale up. But got my license in 2018. Started in the bottom, just like everyone does when they start off somewhere. I was able to scale out. We'll do 8 figures this year in insurance sales. So pretty cool. It's been a great journey. All virtual. So just having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, that's terrific. 8 figures is a big milestone, so congratulations on that upcoming. Can you tell
Thank you.
our audience a little bit how you went from zero to multi-millions?
Should
Yeah,
say in under a year, which is pretty impressive.
yeah, there's it's funny when people talk about stats, right? There's so many different ways to define stats. So, little bit more about myself. And I like to add this just in case there's someone else struggling as well. But I struggled with drug addiction for about 20 years of my life. So 2012, I actually got clean. And I was sleeping on couches for my first year. Didn't own a car. It wasn't working, wasn't doing anything. My first job when I got clean was actually cleaning toilets, washing dishes on an oil rig for 7.25 an hour, which was minimum wage at that time. And that was the first time working minimum wage since I was a teenager, really. But it was just like the willingness to like do whatever I had to do to get started, and like knowing that this would just lead to the next thing, to me it was like when I was struggling with addiction, a lot of it had to do with just me thinking like I knew better, like thinking I was in control and stuff like that. And when I got clean and started learning how to stay clean, which was really the getting clean's easier than staying clean. But like having like that mindset where it's like I just got to get started. Like who cares? It's 7.25 an hour, right? And so many times I think people with their business in their businesses is like, oh, I don't want to do this for that. I don't want to do this. I want to do it. You know what I mean? They want to be like further down that road, and then they like eliminate the simple, easy things that don't seem important to get there. And I think that's important. But then fast forward 2018, I get my insurance license. Made cumulatively made $1 million my first 36 months. My fourth year made $1 million. I was working with one insurance carrier. And last year, I decided to add some other insurance carriers, add some other products, knowing that when I did that, the carrier I was working with was probably going to cancel my contract. So we were doing 8 figures then. 2022, we did $15 million in sales, helped 17,000 families. And as soon as that happened, that was it. My business was gone. So went from 8 figures to zero in October last year. And then hit 7 figures our 6 month. And then we'll do, like I said, we'll end up doing eight figures either first 12 months of being in business or the first full year. But yeah, it's been a journey. But the thing they always say is like once you figure out how to do it once, like you could do it again. And I think it's like super important to think about like, people when they're going through like that process of like learning their business and learning how to scale their business, like it's super uncomfortable. And there's like all this effort, money, time, but like it's like giving you like this skill, right? I was able to, basically throw my 7 figure income in the fire and hope that it comes back, and realize that once you have the skill, it's a lot easier. At least you know the path, right? You know the path, and I don't know if easy is the right word, but you know the path and what to expect.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely the path. And you said, and thank you for sharing your story because we don't know what our listeners are going through. So I really appreciate that you making that connection potentially with someone. Um, you said you have to start somewhere. I think that is really important when businesses may feel stuck, right? Like I don't know where to start. Well, start somewhere. You have to start. So can you talk to our audience a little bit about what systems matter more for long-term freedom?
Yeah, when you say the word long-term freedom, what I hear like in my head is like duplication, right? And I hear about like systems and processes. A lot of business owners, and I've done, I had a landscape business, I had a construction business. I worked in full commission, repo and cars. I felt like I was like a partner with that because he gave me 40% of what I can make the company, right? I just didn't have a lot of the headaches that he had, right? The stresses of actually being the owner in charge of everything. But when you talk about like true freedom, right? I think about like most business owners are they're just employees, right? They're employees in their own business. And for me, I know when I became a business owner, it was like the goal of freedom, right? So like when I had my landscape company, like I had to be the one cutting the grass. you know when I had my construction company, like I wasn't the one doing the construction, but I had to do the estimates, I had to do the clients, I had to do customer service. Like I was a salesperson basically, right? As a salesperson, customer service person, so like I had to be doing that, right? So like yes, I had a lot of freedoms, no one told me what to work, but like realistically, like when you're the business owner, like everyone that pays you money is your boss now, right? So you actually have a lot more bosses. So with my insurance business, it was really important because the reason I got into insurance, or the reason I was looking for something different in my life, right? It was finding something that was going to give me ultimate freedom. That was it. I was living in Louisiana. I grew up by the beach. Louisiana doesn't really have a beach, believe it or not, even though they have all that coastline. And I was just like, man, I just need to get back by the beach. Like just like the beach atmosphere just makes me happy. So I was like, I need to find a business that'll let me do what I want, where I want, however I want. Like that was the three requisites, right? So like I knew no matter what it was, it needed to give me those three things. So I was looking for franchises, right? Franchises, like a proven system that works. I was looking at that at first. And someone pointed insurance over to me. I was like, well, I know insurance is a good business, but I didn't know too much. For me, it was like, how do you acquire the client, right? Because I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of times business owners they get caught up in the product. Like it's like, oh, I want to open a tanning salon, like because I like tanning. It just seems nice. Maybe not as big now, but like that was in the 90s and 2000s,
It
tanning
was.
salon
It was huge.
it was a thing, right? But
Yeah.
like like people get caught up in like this thing. But for me, it's like, what's the need? What's the need, right? When I had a construction company, it's because a bunch of houses got flooded. Over 200,000 houses got flooded. Like the local community could not handle how much work there was. It's like great supply and demand thing to solve. So insurance, it was like the same thing. But then first it's learning how to sell insurance. I was just a self-employed insurance salesman, right? I had to make sales to make money. And then it's like, all right, well, how do I scale this and build systems and processes? And that is like one, learning it yourself, like learning the processes, mastering the processes, and then start eliminating processes out of your business, right? So, the easiest way to do that, right, if you're listening is, take a piece of paper and write down every single thing that you do, every single task, right? And I do this, and I probably got to do this again because I feel like I'm working way too much lately. But write down every single task that you have, and then it's like, all right, cool, which one of these can I eliminate? And then you clump them together and you hire a person to take care of that, right? And then the trick is right away, like that doesn't mean you go spend more time at the beach, right? That means you do some more stuff to create more income for your business, right? And get yourself further down the road. I know me, if I'm doing admin tasks, that's not going to help my business get further down the road, right? So you got to look at that, because a lot of times business owners, that's what they're doing. They're doing sales, admin, they're the secretary, they're the customer service rep, they're every single thing. So you want to start getting those things off your plate that somebody else could handle.
David, I think a lot of what you have talked about in your work that we followed is about how mentorship has shaped part of your journey. So we talked a little bit about systems and the hustle. But why do you stress the importance of mentorship for others?
It's funny. So a lot of things I bring back to like literally getting clean. So,
Mhm.
um, my whole life I struggled with, but I didn't know I was struggling with because I felt like I was in control and I could stop anytime I want. Like I still went to work, I still lived the normal life. Like I wasn't like, ended up in jail and rehabs and stuff all the time. Did eventually get to do that later on in my addiction, but majority of it, I just looked like a regular person that just, partied too hard. And I ended up walking into a 12-step meeting, really as a supporter to help somebody else. And that's where you get a sponsor, right? And to me, like that's your mentor to stop doing drugs. And just so many things just made so much sense to me that like you don't have to do it yourself. It's okay to ask for help. Like if you want to be clean, like find someone who's been staying clean and just duplicate the stuff they've been doing. Just like all these simple basic things. And then I ran into like a Tony Robbins audiobook, and he talked about like if you want to be successful, just model somebody that's having success. I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, because I was the kind of person who was like, oh, I need to go, like I'm starting a landscape business. So I would like go to Barnes and Noble and like look for landscape books and like try to like self-teach myself, instead of like call up the person who has a successful landscape business and be like, knowing what I know now, I would have worked for him for free, right? I think Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett, like, offered to work for free when he got out of college, and he wouldn't hire him. He's like, no, you'll be too expensive because now I got to teach you, right? Because time is more valuable than money. So to me, mentorship's like the ultimate hack. Like if you could find somebody that's going to teach you how to be successful and you believe it, right? There's a lot of people online that want to teach things that they haven't really figured out themselves yet nowadays. But when you find somebody that you truly believe can teach you, like to me, that's the biggest hack. So, I have people like do some real estate deals. I don't know a ton about real estate. I'm learning as I go through experience, but like I have a really good friend that knows a ton. So I have a question, I ask him, but like I also go into that conversation, like whatever he says, I'm doing. And I think that's the thing with mentorship. A lot of times people, it's not even like they're looking for mentorship. They're looking for someone to co-sign their current idea, right? So they're going to ask five different people until someone says something that's aligned to whatever they had. And they think that's, oh, I got five mentors. Like, no, like, so I have one person I ask questions about real estate, right? If it's insurance related, like I have different mentors for different things. And if I ask them a question, they give me the advice, like I act on it. And I think that's super, super important. But without mentorship, there's no way. I mean, I'd be nowhere close to where I'm at now.
I think, along those lines, definitely you've hit home about, why a mentor is so important for someone. What about how does that tie into the person being coachable? And why is that important? Or what advice can you give to our listeners about making themselves more coachable?
Yeah, so I've hired over 5,000 insurance agents since I had my insurance license, right? So that's a lot of experience, right? You start
Yeah,
learning people, you
quite a
start
bit.
salespeople, right? So you learn all these things, and for me, it's so crazy, right? Because I've hired people that made $0 with me, and then I've hired people that made $1 million with me, right? The only variable in that situation was the person. Every single person has the same comp program, the same leads, the same selling the same product. Every single person has the same thing, right? So why do I not have 5,000 people that have made $1 million? Why is it, obviously a very small percentage of that? And it's because most people aren't coachable. Most people are trying to do too much. They have no focus, right? They're like, they'll come to me like, hey, I'm thinking about, and I'll get in my DMs all the time. People will message me on Facebook and like, hey, I'm thinking about insurance. I'm like, cool, what are you doing now? Well, I do taxes. I'm a real estate agent, and they name all these different businesses. I was like, you think another business is going to help you get where you want to go? Like, I don't think that's going to be the solution for you. Uh, but a lot of times people, again, it's just not being coachable, and they're just like trying to do things on their own. And another great thing I learned at a 12-step meeting, your best thinking got you here, and then that's what I have to tell people sometimes. It's like, listen, your best thinking got you the results you're having. And if you're like interested in working with me, then you're not happy with those results, right? So like we have to be willing to make a change. Or if not, like I can't help, like I don't want to waste each other's time. Like if I can't help you, I'm not gonna try. And there's a lot of times people I don't bother with because I know I can't help them because they're not willing to be coachable. But yeah, that's how you make changes in your life, in anything, any single thing. Now I learn from like I just act like I'm dumb. I don't know anything all the time. That's the best way to learn stuff.
You're not the smartest person in the room, is the thought
No,
there.
no, far from it.
I mentor people often, David, and I'm curious to know um, what traits you look for to know if someone's not coachable. Are there any kind of one or three things that you immediately see off the bat where you say, um, I don't know if this is going to work because they're not coachable? For me, when you said, if you're hiring a mentor, you want to listen. They're seeking, and you hit it right on the nail. You said they're always seeking, someone to be agreeable with them, and that's typically my first red flag, right? If I'm giving advice and then they say, well, let's do it this way, that's red flag number one for me. So I don't know if you have any others. that you can provide our audience to, if they're saying this to themselves or they do this, perhaps they need to take another plan to be a little bit more coachable?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a big one where they do want to and that's that, I guess that's probably, if I look at my business, so now I help people create virtual insurance agencies, right? So now I'm teaching people how to be mentors in their business. And that's what I find all the time. I'm like, listen, you're super successful in this business and you just hired this person and somehow they're talking you into doing things their way instead of your way. And it's a huge thing that happens in my business because people sound so confident, right? People sound so confident. I remember I was in the army, and a guy that lived in my dorm room or bunk or whatever you want to call it, barracks. Dude, he used to, like, you ask him a question, he'd be like this, like, answer without even hesitating, like, just like, I'm like, man, this guy knows everything. And then later on, you like get some information, like, dude, you're wrong, man. What the hell are you talking about? And he would just like, oh, but like he had me fooled. I'm like, dude, I feel, how does this guy know so much information? But he just, I don't know if he just thought he knew or he just liked, he didn't want to be the person. Like, I got no issues saying I don't know. It's funny. So, if I'm talking to somebody and they're interrupting me, and another thing is if they're like telling you all the things they've done. And I did that too early on, right? And somebody actually stopped me. They're like, David, I don't want to hear about what you've done in the past. Like, like crushed my soul, right? But he was right. He was 100% right. Like, me telling you about the achievements I had in the past isn't going to help me with like my present right now, right? Because a lot of times people done a lot of amazing things and they're holding on to these amazing things instead of like being like, all right, you know what? I need help, right? If you're coaching someone, Nicole, then they obviously need help with something. So if they're sitting there and telling you how amazing they are, then they're not really open for help. They're too busy trying to edify themselves with you. So for me, it's like you want to look for somebody, that isn't doing those things, that's asking questions and listening. Like, how are you going to receive any help if you can't listen? That's another thing. And then, I always teach my managers, you give them a test. Hey, Nicole, this is what I need you to do, right? When you go home today or after this call or after this Zoom meeting, right? I want you to write down like the 10 top priorities in your life, right? And then write down the 3 action steps that you need to do to accomplish those 10 priorities. And then let's go over them tomorrow. Matter of fact, when you're done with this, send me a picture of it, and if if they can't do that, then it's like, how the heck are you gonna help them with anything else? Right? If they can't do that, I just started a school group and I was like, what, the first thing I'm gonna do, the biggest thing is every single thing is like mindset. So I made a mindset course at first. And so was my school group's like, I need to make $3,000 by the end of the month, please help. And someone else is like, I need this and I need this. So, hey, have you done the mindset course yet? Have you done the mindset course yet? No, 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 no. It's like, well, that's probably why we have money problems. It's like 8 small modules. It'll take you like an hour to do, and I felt like it was really important. You decided to pay to come in my group. So apparently you thought I was someone that could teach you something, and I'm trying to, but I'm not able to.
I am a big fan of what you just said. Here are 10 things or 5 things, go do them, come back to me, and then we'll take next steps. So with that notion in mind, can you give our listeners 3 to 4 practical steps that they can start doing this week to start scaling their business or perhaps a system?
Yeah. So if we want to scale business, is I think the biggest thing that comes to my head, um, is outsourcing some of the work you're doing, probably, right? Well, let's break that down first, because it depends where you're at with your business. So the first thing that I see with business owners is they don't realize like what their most important job is, right? So the first thing is like make sure that you're creating revenue. That's your most important job. I do a mindset call every 5 weeks, and I ask all the business owners, hey, what's the most important thing for you to do? And they say everything except for create revenue, right? So like that's the biggest thing. So now once you have that revenue thing created, then look at like, all right, what is stopping you from creating revenue? Like, what are the things that you're doing in your business that when you do that, it's not creating revenue? And then use some simple math, right? So for instance, I would say like an insurance agent is gonna make $1,000 an hour. So if an insurance agent can make $1,000 an hour, but you're doing admin work, you could pay an admin $1,000 a week, to handle that admin work that's taking you away from running an insurance policy that's cost you $1,000 an hour, right? So every time you do an admin work, it's costing you in your head $1,000 an hour, right? So like whatever that is, right? So look at, what you're making in your business, and you're looking at that. So it's like, what does it cost you to do those things, and then figure out how to outsource that. A lot of times people are scared to hire an employee because that's a cost, right? You have to spend money, you have to train, but like you cannot scale a business without people. Like you just, it's not going to happen. There's no way. Like I said, we sell about 1,000 policies a month. That's 1,000 families we help a month, right? I personally help 0 people. Like it's not me, right? It's 100 something insurance agents that are doing that work, and then all my admins to help back them up and answer all those questions, everything they need. So finding somebody to help with that is super important. And then once you do that, then the next thing is, how do you create more sales? Right. And figure out how to create more sales. So typically what I do periodically, because it always changes, is I look at my business. I'm like, all right, here's my business, and I got to find what is the one bottleneck that's slowing me down from growth, right? From like exponential growth, right? And you don't look for like 2 things, 3 things. It's one thing, one main thing, that's holding you back. And that will change, but usually it's figuring out how to create more revenue, through more sales reps, through marketing, and stuff like that. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, learn how to outsource this admin work or anything that's not creating revenue, then learn how to figure out how to create more revenue. And then you just keep going back and forth on those 2 things.
Danielle and I are obviously our company is virtual assisting. Delegating is so important. Danielle, I know you agree that that's the only way you can scale, but do you have any tidbit advice on that for our listeners too?
Yeah, so virtual assistant was exactly what I was going to say. I just didn't want to create some rabbit hole. I didn't realize that was your business. So that's exactly what you need. Like I was going to say, that's exactly what you need. You need 100% need a virtual assistant. So look, it looks like I wasn't even trying to plug you on purpose now. But yeah, no, I have VAs. I have 4 or 5 VAs. They're absolutely amazing. My business would fall apart without them. I've lost good employees that weren't VAs, and but with VAs, they're great work, hard workers. They take so much off my plate, and they could. I mean, there's nothing VA can't do. It's to me, it's a huge part of my business, a huge way to scale. So like, yes, it's 100%. That's when you make that list. That's who you should be giving that list to, a VA, 100%.
Thank you. So one of our favorite questions to ask is something that we ask of everyone, and I just know you're going to have a great answer to this just based on your story and your success so far. But the title of our podcast is obviously Not Your Average CEO, and we chose you to come on because we feel like you're a great fit for that. But we'd love for you to tell our audience what makes you not your average CEO and what that means to you.
Yeah. So I get a lot of compliments about me just being raw and real. If you notice, I didn't really tell my story. I didn't talk about drug addiction until I had success, right? Because I'm not naive, right? So a lot of people will judge people, right, for that because they know somebody who did struggle with drug addiction, got clean, and then relapsed, right? That's pretty common thing. So it wasn't until I became a 7-figure earner that I started sharing that, and then I started sharing that to really reach more people, right? That's like my thing is no matter who you are, what you're doing, like there's so many more levels of success you could be having. And I learned that through myself and helping and mentoring and training and coaching people in the insurance business mostly. And once you know that, then it's everything changes. But the one thing that, like I said, people just say I'm just really honest, real. I had somebody actually, she found me through YouTube. She jumped on a Zoom with me, and she's like, I'm gonna ask you some questions, and I know you're gonna tell me the truth. Like, and to me, like that was like the biggest compliment someone could give me. There's you could buy nice cars and watches and all these vacations, all this stuff, but like for someone to like judge my character in such a positive way, like, you can't buy that, right? You can't buy that. So to me, like that means a ton. And the trust, that I've gained in the people that work with me and stuff like that, and just everything. We're just like a family, like a little dysfunctional family, right? Sales organization working together. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Something else that I do a little different is, on the longevity thing, right? I eat a lot of really good food and do a lot of exercise, and doctors and all that stuff. I went from like trying to kill myself, right? Not really, but that's what you're doing
Yeah.
when you're doing drugs, to like, all right, cool. I really enjoy my life now. Let me see how long I could stay around and how many people I can impact.
No, it
Thank
sounds
you
like
so
you have
much.
impacted many and many families, and many folks. And I hope you do some more with your story, and all the continued success.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that.
Thanks, David, so much. Can you tell our audience where they can find more from you? And we will, of course, include it in our show notes.
Yeah, of course. I'm on most social media platforms as David Price Official. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It's got a school group if you're into insurance, school group / insurance. But yeah, you can find me pretty easy through those platforms. Feel free to reach out to me, send me a message if you have any questions. I'm always willing to try to help anyone that's willing to take the help.
You've been listening to Not Your Average CEO Lifeline with your hosts Danielle Cuomo, CEO, and Nicole Gallicchio-Elz, COO. This podcast has been sponsored by Virtual Assist USA. If you'd like to know more about the hosts or exploring virtual assistant services, visit virtualassistusa.com for more information.